Welcome back, mobile developers. In this video and in the next ones, I'm gonna be showing you how to build a new feature from scratch, from the very first steps, the business requirements, till the deployment of the feature itself. So in this first episode, I'm gonna be covering the first part of the life cycle of the feature, which is the business requirements. So let's say you're working in a software company and you have a development team and also you have a product team which is in charge of understanding the business and bringing the new business requirements to the development team. So let's imagine it's a Monday morning and you arrived to your company, or you're working remotely. Well, actually it is Monday morning today. And you have your Monday weekly meeting with the product team. The product owner comes up to you and says, hey, we have to implement a new feature. You say, okay, cool, let's go over it. What's in your mind? And so he comes up and shares the screen with you, and he presents this user story in some tool like Jira. You read it and you say, okay, as a user, I want to know when the app updates the ISS position, so the International Space Station position. For those of you that just arrived to the channel, the ISS tracker is the app that we are improving in each episode. And so after you read this, you start to ask yourself a bunch of questions, right? So here starts the first phase of the mobile developer and the relationship with the product owner to understand what we actually have to do. So a quick guide to actually understand the business requirements better is to ask yourself the following. Do we understand the requirements? Like if we go back to the user story, what does updates the ISS position mean? Does it mean when we do the request to the backend to get the data? Does it mean we need to update the position from, let's say, a database? What does it mean I want to know? Does it mean we need to send a push notification? Does it mean we need to show some activity indicator? Does it mean that we have to set a reminder? So you start asking all these questions to the product owner, because there will be times where you will get these kinds of user stories where there is just one sentence and there's no way you can understand everything that needs to be done. So you start to complete the user story alongside the product owner. The product owner is not your enemy. Is someone that should be working alongside with you, and the objective should be that between the development team and the product team we achieve the best results possible. And one way to understand better the user story or the narrative is by adding a use case. And after discussing with the product owner, you come up with this use case right here. When the app is loaded, the ISS position is requested from a backend. So now you know it's a backend where you're actually requesting the position. After this request, we have to show some kind of activity indicator to let the user know the app is working under the hood. Then the position is obtained from the backend, and then the activity indicator is dismissed. Now we understand much better the intent of the feature. But then you start to have other kinds of questions, like for example, do we know the value to do this? Why are we doing this? What is the data and feedback supporting this new feature? Why are we doing it? It's very common to get a business requirement or a new feature and no one explains to you why or the intent of why we're doing this. So it's a good thing that you discuss this with the product owner and understand the value of it, because if you understand why we're doing this, you will be in a much better position to offer your expertise and improve and give your insights of the requirements that they are presenting to you. So after you come up with this question, the product owner replies to you and he says, okay, users may not know what is happening in the app if the loading process takes too long. Which makes a lot of sense. If you have an application and the application is stuck and you don't know what's going on because there's nothing indicating that there's some kind of activity, it's a bad user experience. So that could be a really good value for implementing this feature. Another important thing when you start to understand the business requirements is to not assume things and always write down the unknowns that the product owner could not clarify for you. So for instance, in this feature, we don't know how long we want to be displaying the activity indicator in case the request takes too long. And we will say that the activity indicator will be visible until the request finishes. It doesn't matter how long it takes. So we can move on to the next section, which is the user interface. So you might want to ask the product owner, okay, do we have a design available for this feature? Did you work with a designer to come up with a screen or wireframes to understand the user interface you want to achieve? If they do have designs, they should be part of the user story. Or if there are no designs, which is very likely, then sometimes it's actually better for you because you get to propose to the product owner your solution, which is often going to be simpler than what the design team is going to come up with. And you also get to start to build this relationship with the product owner where you don't just do whatever they tell you to do. Instead, you participate and you build the feature together. It's a common case where the developer thinks that the features have to come from the product owner or product team, completely analyzed and mature with everything written down and all the possible situations analyzed. But that's 95% of the times not the case. So as a developer, and since you are the technical expert, it's your job to propose solutions to the product team, which sometimes may not know or may not be an expert in the technology that you're working on. For instance, there might be a solution that works in some way for an Android platform and in a different way for an iOS device. The user interface may be different for different platforms, and the product owner might not know this, or the designer might not know this. And this is the time where you get to show your expertise and build that confidence with the product owner, where in the future they will say, okay, I can rely on this developer because he knows what he's talking about. He will feel that he can work with you much better because you propose solutions and you're not just waiting for them to chew everything and analyze everything for you. And the last thing, and really important one, that I think is going to help you a lot understanding the business requirements, is to create flowcharts or sequence diagrams of the feature in question. So again, this is part of the communication between the development team and the product team. So I have come up with this flowchart right here. So when the app is loaded, we request the ISS position. After that, we display the loading indicator or the activity indicator. Then we ask ourselves if the ISS position was loaded successfully. And if it did, we remove the activity indicator, and finally we relocate the ISS position in the map and we start over again. Then you present this flowchart to the product owner, and the first thing that is going to come up there is what happens if there was an error trying to load the ISS position from the backend. So clearly that's a use case that was not considered, that came up from the development team analyzing the feature. And again, after discussing with your product owner, you come up with a solution. So when the position could not be loaded successfully, we will display the last position timestamp, which will inform the user when was the last time that the ISS position was updated. Another way, which is also efficient and a good tool to understand a feature, is a sequence diagram. So here, instead of having a flow, we have a sequence of steps. So we have the ISS Tracker app, and when the app loads, we show the activity indicator. The app will request the ISS position to a backend. The backend will respond. Then we will hide the activity indicator, and then we update the ISS position on the map. All of these are great tools to again communicate with the product owner, write down whatever is not known, understand the business requirements, understand the value of why we are doing this, and try to avoid as many assumptions as possible. What you have to take from this video is that the communication between team members and with other teams is key, and that you should not expect to get features and use cases completely analyzed with designs and acceptance criteria written down, because that's something you will have to build with the product team. And by doing that, you will gain their confidence and you will get a much better working relationship with them. So coming back to our business requirements, now we have a much better understanding of what we have to do. So we have our initial narrative, and then we have a use case of a happy path. We have a use case of a sad path when there is an error loading the position from the back end. And then we have our value to understand why we're doing this. We have an assumption that we are doing and we discussed with the product owner. And finally, we have a copy of our flowchart and our sequence diagram that we can post to our Jira ticket or Trello or wherever tool you're using to track your progress. And now we have an agreement with the product team of what needs to be done, and we are in a better position to go to the next step of our feature life cycle. So stay tuned and see you in the next episode.